So I'm guys, Irfan back again with another video, and this is part 7 of the multi-part video series on Visual Basic for Microsoft Excel. Now in the previous video, what we had shown was how to use a range function to either read the value of a certain cell or assign a value to a certain cell. Now, this was all fine if the data that we are trying to pull or are trying to write into a cell was on the same sheet. Now, supposing you are trying to pull the contents of a cell that's on a different sheet or on a totally different file altogether, how would you do that? So that's the topic of today's video, and we will see how we can solve that issue of how to get data or write data to a from a file that from a different file altogether or to a different sheet on the same file. Okay, so let's get started. First, what we'll do is we'll look at how to grab data from a different sheet and bring into another sheet. So, okay, let's start with that. So I have here an Excel file. It's called reading values from another sheet of workbook. Okay, so what we are trying to do here is we have two sheets, sheet 1 and sheet 2. Now, what we want is the cell A1 from sheet 1. We want the value to be copied into sheet 2 in cell A1. So let me just put colors in here. So sheet 1, cell A1, and sheet 2, cell A1. So whatever the value is stored in sheet 1's A1 cell, we would want that to be transferred to or copied into A1 cell in sheet 2. So let's see how we would have Visual Basic do that for us. So the first thing that we will do is we will go into the Developer tab. Okay, that's your drop menu item here, and then you go into Visual Basic. All right. Now, what we are going to do is we're going to be inserting a module. So you go into the insert, click on it, and you select insert module. Okay. So first what we'll do is we'll give the module a name. So sub data from different sheet. Okay. Now, always remember, it's always best to use variable names or subroutine names that actually are logical, because it may happen that 6 months down the line or a year down the line, you are trying to troubleshoot some code. And if you give these names that are logical, it will make you make it easier for you to troubleshoot. Okay. So that's why I always try make it a point to give these names that are very logical, and it makes it easier for me later on if I ever need to troubleshoot. So I can understand what, because obviously 6 months down the line or a year down the line, I may not have as clear recollection of why I wrote this code the way I did. But if I give names that are more logical, it will be easier for me, and that's what I always recommend. Okay, now what we do is let's get started on this. We are like I said, we are pulling data from A1 cell in sheet 1 and bringing into A1 cell in sheet 2. Now, because we are going from one sheet to another sheet, we are going to be using the worksheets property, sheet 2 dot range A1 is equal to worksheets sheet 1 dot range. There you go. Okay, so essentially what this is saying is the sheet in sheet 2, the A1 cell is getting its value from sheet 1 A1 cell. All right, so we can close this and put out here. Now what we'll do is we'll insert a button here that when we click, it will pull the value from sheet A1 and plug into sheet 8, A1, cell A1, sheet 1 into cell A1, sheet 2. So let's insert a button here. Okay, just going to click OK, and now I'm going to hold down the Alt key and drag it so the button, the edges of the button, they snap to the grid, and then we'll also change the text that's showing up. Data from different sheet. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to assign uh, or either assign or tag a macro to this button here. So the way we do that is move your mouse pointed to this button and you do a right click and you come down to assign macro. Now here you will see the modules that you have already created. Data from a different sheet, we just got done creating that. So we select that and click on OK. So now what we have done is the macro we just wrote, we have assigned that to this button. So whenever this button gets clicked, that code in that macro gets executed. Now, if I click on it here, nothing happened. Okay, that's because it is pulling the data from sheet 1, A1, into sheet 2, cell A1. But here A1 cell is empty. So if I were to put in some random text and go back to sheet 2, and now if I click, this cell should be populated with ABC. There you go. Okay, so that's how you pull in data from another sheet, but both the sheets are in the same workbook. Okay, so let's just quickly just go over that once more, just to make sure that we understand. Worksheets, this is where you defining which sheet the data is going into, and then the range, we have covered that in the previous video. Into is equal to worksheets, sheet 1, so you're telling VBA which sheet to put the data from, and which cell, and which sheet you want the data going into, and which cell. So that was how you would essentially have data being read from one sheet and pasted into another sheet. Now, if I were to override this with XYZ, and I go into sheet 2 and click on this button again, this ABC would be replaced by XYZ because it will get the new value, new contents of sheet 1 A1 would get pasted in the sheet 2 A1 cell. There you go. Okay, so that was how you would be reading and writing data from one sheet to another sheet. So that was the first part of this video. Now let's move to the second part. Now supposing you have data that's coming from a different file altogether. All right, so how would you pull that data and bring it into this sheet using VBA? Okay, so let's see. I'm just going to color this green. Okay, so we want, and I have a file called data store. Okay, now the A3 cell here in data store, I want to have a button. When I click on it, it would go into this file, read the contents of A3 and paste it into this second file in this sheet in A3 cell. So how we would do that? Again, we would go into the developer, Visual Basic, okay, and what we'll do is, again, we'll do an insert module, okay, and once again, make sure we give it a logical name, data from different file. Okay, so now if 6 months down the line, if I want to troubleshoot this, I've labeled this logically enough that it will be easier for me to understand what this is doing. Okay, so in the previous example, we used another property called worksheets. So in here, we'll use a new property called workbook. Workbooks, and within bracket and double quotes, you give it the name of the file, the name of the file from which you're getting the data. Now, because it is coming into this file, leading values from the file. We don't need to define the workbook in this, but the source, we do need to define which workbook the source is sitting in. So we say worksheets sheet 2 dot range A3. Okay, now that is equal to, so we are saying worksheet, the sheet 2 A3 cell is getting its data from workbooks, store data store, name of the file is data store XLSX. So you have to give the extension also dot worksheets. So you define which worksheet it is, dot range and cell. Okay, so we are saying in sheet 2 cell A3, bring in the value from the file called datastore.xlsx, this Excel file. Open this Excel file. In this, there's a sheet called sheet 1, and then the contents of A3 cell you plug into sheet 2 of the leading values from another workbook or another sheet, and cell is A3. Okay, we close this, and now let's create another button. And I'm just going to go ahead and create this. Just click on OK. I'm going to hold down the Alt key again to resize so it snaps to the grid, makes it look more aesthetically pleasing. Let's change the text on it. Data from different file. Okay. Now what we want to do is, like we did with this button here, what we need to do is we need to assign a macro to this button. Okay. And the way we do that is you move your mouse to this button, and then you do a right click, and you come down to assign macro. And excuse me, this is the macro that we just created data from a different file. Okay, click on OK. It got assigned to this or tagged to this button. Now, if I click this button, the code in that macro would get executed. If I click on it, nothing happened. Why? Because this is blank over here. Now, if I were to type in hello and go back to this sheet, now if I click on this button, hello should get populated here. Because what it has done is it has gone to this file, read the contents of sheet 1 cell A3, come back here, and in sheet 2 in cell A3, it plugged in that value. So that is essentially how you would read or write values from one file to another file, or one sheet to another sheet. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to see more videos like this, please kindly subscribe, and also make sure that you hit that bell icon so you'll always receive a notification when the new videos are uploaded. Thank you.